Hello, everyone. Welcome to 2021. Wow, 2021. Here we are. I've missed you for the last couple of weeks. We've had holidays. I don't know when most people would be listening to the show. They listen to it all over the time, all over the place because, come on, Topple. My dog wanted to sit behind me. That is his place when I'm working. We took a break for the holidays. This show will be archived, so I don't know when you yourself will be listening to it, but we are in a new year, in a new era. So here we go. We've been, for the last several weeks, doing shows on relationships, all aspects of relationships. I've got something to finish up today, which is what constitutes an abusive relationship. I think sometimes we so normalize these things that we become inured to them. We don't realize that this is not all relationships and that there's something wrong here that needs to be corrected. So we're going to finish our discussion on that. I want to talk with you about resilience and what I think constitutes a resilient person. Certainly, a resilient person is one that adapts well. A resilient person is someone who has a lot of characteristics that I want you to think more deeply about in this world of enormous change, where you really can expect the unexpected. We must do everything we can to help ourselves do well here. So that was that discussion. Then we're going to go back into a discussion, if we have time today. If not, it'll be next week, that I think is very important on high conflict personalities. Have you ever heard that term before? A high conflict personality. Well, they're around, and we must deal with them. And there's a very good book and a very good writer of this article, and also the book that I did a course on one time that he wrote, Bill Eddy. So we're going to talk about what he has to say about high conflict personalities, whether you are working for them or whether they're in your home. So there's a way to deal with almost everything. Let's do a prayer. Get us all on the same page. Awful glad to be with you today. I am Martha Novak, and this is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. We don't mince words here. I guess that's why it's called that. Huh? Here we go. Dear God, you who are everything, all there is, you who are all we are, all everything in the world is, we thank you so much, and we are opening ourselves now to know you more deeply. Be the love that you are. Carry it in our hearts always, in our very beings. Show us how to be a light in this world, in this new world. And put your love in our hearts, your wisdom in our being. We open ourselves to this, and we say we know nothing, for it is the you through us and through all things that know it all. We ask that we listen to the show and be a part of the show through that experience of self, where you are, so that you may communicate directly with us and tell us what we need to do. As a next step, we thank you so much for this glorious world just as it is. We know we're all in the process of great change, and we look forward to it. And so it is. Amen. If you see me glancing over to the left, I should show you what is here. We have, we're down in North Carolina in a little restaurant that we like very much down the mountain. We went in there because they have a bakery and they have fabulous things. And Michael wanted an apple strudel for Christmas. So we went down there to get it, and there was a little kitten in the parking lot. She's the cutest little thing. She's the only female I have. Her name is Figgy Pudding. And so she just, can you come on the air for a minute, Figgy? And I'll put you right back. Oh, Figgy's about ready for a nap, so she has collapsed. But this is Figgy Pudding. She doesn't much like being on the air or having her picture taken, but isn't she a sweetheart? She's a good girl. Oh, there's the motor. There it goes. She's about 6 months old, and she's a great little kitten. Great little addition to this house. We have all boys except for me, and I had precious little estrogen these days, so anyway, that's what it is. So, guys, we have been talking about, when we left off for the holidays, an article that is called 13 Signs Your Partner is Emotionally Abusive. This was by Laken Howard and Carol Strieber. In my opinion, I thought it was a good article. I don't quote things that I think are good articles. Of course, I always go a little further than the articles do, because my end result is not just giving you information, but trying to put everything in the perspective of consciousness, which is why you listen to a show like this. So, just to catch you up, I'm not going to explain these things because they're archived on a show, the last show we did 2 weeks ago, right before Christmas. These were what they said. They tell you what to wear. They are selfish in bed. They blame you for their actions. They make you feel confused. They compare you to others. They say you're too sensitive. They don't let you have time alone. And that's where we stopped. So let's go into the rest of this article. I do want to say the reason I'm even talking about abuse is because we always don't recognize what it is. We don't call it that. If we have been reared in a house that has been in some way dysfunctional, children, to survive, do three things. They normalize the situation. Helps them cope. This is normal. It's their version of normal. The second thing they do is they generalize. All families are like this. Men are like this. Women are like this. This is what relationships are. You see? You normalize. And the third thing you do to stand it as a child is you elevate your situation to, what do I want to say, to some sort of sacred proportion. In other words, it makes you a better person if you sacrifice like this. It makes you a better person if you support an abusive mother or father. This is what a good daughter or a good son does, right? These are devices that children use so they can stand the situation. All of them are lies. And what we try to do in this arena is to talk about the things that are true beyond the lies, and try to get us all to wake up so that we may live more deeply, more lovingly, and more happily. So, going into this article, again, picking up where we left off, another telltale sign of emotional abuse is when the partner isolates you. They may not let you visit friends or family. They might come up with excuses for why you shouldn't go to them yourself. They may look like they're taking your side, And they may guilt you into complying so that you do what they want you to do and not what you want to do or what you think you should do. So, you know, it can come out, this article goes on to say that they may say something like, that best friend of yours isn't supportive of our relationship. So if you love me, you'll, you know, let's not see her so much. Stay away from her. She's an ass, you know. Okay. All of this might not seem bad at first, but especially if you've gotten this kind of, there are two things that kind of hook you. If you've never gotten this kind of focused attention before, it can be very flattering. They love you, love you, love you, right? And certainly if you have come from any kind of dysfunctional relationship and you don't know what one actually is a good one, you may find that something that you desire. But as time goes on, as you get to know them a little more, as they pull you more deeply into the relationship, you'll find that they are running interference between you and the people that are important to you. Now, the thing that strikes me about really, honestly, almost everything we've said, perhaps it's striking you, isn't this cultish? Almost all of these characteristics have to do with a cult. So, guys, cults just aren't out there in the world as these wacky religions and experiences that people sign up for. They actually began in families. They can be a very strong cult within a dysfunctional family. Okay. So the next thing that abusive people do is they always have to be right. Guys, if you're going to have a good relationship, you've got to give that up. There's a sign on Michael's in my wall downstairs that said, I'm practicing being kind instead of right. Being right is one of the things that needing to be right all the time is one of the things that absolutely drives the wedge in a relationship. Have you ever known somebody that just has to tell you what to do all the time? Are you close to them? No, you're not. Most people want a partner who'll talk to you about things, and together you work it out. Sometimes a partner will have a better idea than you do. Sometimes you have a better idea than they do. Who the heck cares if it makes everyone better? Good morning, Kat. Oh, aren't you sweet? Thank you. That is absolutely right. The Kat, she was saying that the show that we're doing this morning was on her mind, the dysfunction we get born into, and how it affects all aspects of our lives until we get it. Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I was talking to my class yesterday, my wonderful advanced class, about shame. And we talked about you don't even have to come from a real dysfunctional relationship. Parenting is just blooming hard. And here's what I mean. I was talking to them about let's say you're a 2-year-old kid and you are just enjoying, and you've run out into the garden and you are in cute little clothes and you just are darling, and you start digging in the mud and pulling up plants and yes, synchronicity is right, Kat, and having just a marvelous time out there, and your mom or dad walk outside and go, oh my God, what have you done? And you've been having the most wonderful time. You're proud of yourself. You're thrilled that you are discovering new things, right? You want to share it with people, and they've told you you're bad and you're wrong. Now, I don't know about you. I came from pretty fine parents, and I got that all the time. What'd you do with that? Well, I tell you what most people do with that. We're ashamed of ourselves. We don't even remember why. A lot of times when I recognize, yeah, there you go, Kat. She says, yes, that happened. It happens all the time, guys. We have one expectation as little myopic children, right? And our parents who don't want the extra work have another idea. And so what most people do when they're growing up is they grow up with a modicum or a lot of shame. Of shame. Shame drives a lot of abusive behavior. So we're going to be addressing shame. Shame is kind of its own subject. And what I want to do is get through some of the relationship stuff, but I want to put it on the table that shame drives a lot of this, you know? And when I see a real shame-based individual in my practice, I always address it and say, tell me what, give me some evidence that you should be really ashamed, and I'll hold your coat about it. I'll let you have it. Nobody can ever tell me. You see, it's hidden in these little tiny instances that have told us we're bad or wrong. And that's a lie we've accepted and told ourselves. It only was about that incident. It was only about that little period of time out in the garden. It isn't an indictment on our lives, but because it happened consistently, repetitively, and because we don't remember it, which is the insidious part, we can't address it. We just accept it. We're bad and wrong. And it becomes that indictment on our whole lives instead of just about, well, that was a 2-year-old's decision to get all muddy and nasty in the yard. You see? We have misinterpreted so much of our lives. And I'm here to tell you, with all love for you, that nothing's what it seems. And that's why we can heal. Okay, let's keep going back to work. So we were talking about this need to be right. This need to be right puts task before people. It puts, tasks, how to do something, the attitude to have before people and who they are. If you really love someone, you're not going to do that. You have to look at why you need to control, why you need to be right. Guess what's underneath? Shame. That's what's underneath. You may not call it that. You may call it, hi, Sheila, and Happy New Year to you, darling. Yes, we all, oh, Sheila, thank you for sharing that. That's a wonderful way of phrasing that. She says she's misinterpreted a lot of her life. I say, who hasn't? Welcome to the Misinterpretation Club. We all have until we go on this journey to consciousness. And then, all of a sudden you're going, wait a minute. And we're no longer seeing with the eyes of the child, which is a very narrow focus. We're seeing with the perspective, then the larger truths of the adult who is emerging with who they are on the inside, which is the ascended God. So it's very exciting, this journey that you all are on. And nobody can do it for us. Here we are, here we are. You can't be in a great relationship and both want to win. And as a matter of fact, if you're in a great relationship, winning is not even on the table. Helping is on the table. Being a contributor is on the table. But winning, throw it out with the garbage, ladies and gentlemen. That's a power struggle. Nobody ever wins a power struggle. Do you realize that? Not unless somebody really is abusive and then they intimidate to win. And is that really winning in the end when your issues are running the show? Nope. So, going back to this article about they always have to be right, it doesn't matter if you're having a disagreement, an argument, or just talking about something of mutual interest. These people who are abusive have to be right every time. Why? Because they don't have a lot of self-esteem. It shows in that and how they respond, right? And why is that? I guarantee you, because shame is underneath. We'll be talking about that, but not today. It's a huge subject. As a matter of fact, I'm doing a whole course on it in my classes on Saturday. So let's move on, shall we? Being right all the time, for the person who has to listen to that. And you see, listen to what I just said. For the person who has to listen to that. I didn't say for the person who's wrong, did I? You see, every single one of us has a reason for doing what we do. It may not be motivated by the same thing the other one is. And these people are arrogant, incredibly arrogant, to think they have the only way. And here's why they're rather dumb. I was going to try to find some nice words. I can't. Here's the dumbness in all that. Instead of relating like a person and communicating back and forth and being curious about what the other person says and everything, they'd rather dominate, be right, and drive you away. They are, in essence, killing closeness. How do you expect to grow together through the years and become more intimate? They're putting themselves before the relationship. And their need to be more than they are. Guys, nobody knows everything. Now, is your relationship doomed with somebody who has a need to be right? No. But I'll tell you what, you better be strong. You better know that you have a way, and your way is as valid as theirs. When they've got their toes over the line, you need to tell them to get back over there and stop trying to control everything. You need to know that you have a right to do it your way, to think your way, to feel your way. Absolutely. And you need to go about knowing how to take care of yourself in that situation. Because if you hear several times a day that you're just blooming wrong because they have a need to be right, not because you are, you're going to eventually think something's wrong with you and that you don't have the good sense you were born with and that you know yourself to have. Get it? Good. The next thing, related of course, is they don't respect your opinion. I think of a couple. I know these people are not clients of mine, but that comes to mind because the woman always says her husband doesn't listen to her. This woman lives in fantasy all the time. She's never developed herself. She stays on the surface. She has no depth. Guys, that's your credibility. Do you understand that? So she may complain that he doesn't listen to her and he doesn't respect her opinion. And I've seen it. He doesn't. But you have to ask why. Is he a bad guy? He could probably encourage her a little more. Sure. But the fact is, she's also not contributing to being listened to by deepening herself and having something to say. So I want to put that on the table. Sometimes things are not what they seem here. All right, this article goes on to say that whether you're talking about a song, a movie, politics, or the news, or whatever you're going to be talking about, your partner should never look down on you. Now, here's something I say. I don't like this pervasive sense of sarcasm in our society. I just absolutely hate it, because sarcasm is when one person is laughing. Do you understand that? And it's always at another person's expense. Sarcasm says you're stupid. What happens to a wonderful relationship that just relates truthfully and honestly and honorably with each other? Why not say, I found your sweater in the closet and I put it up, then say, oh, God, you are so messy. Why not just say what you've done? We're all contributors here. We should be, right? That probably wasn't a very good example. I just made it up. But anyway, you get my drift. We don't go through life going, duh, it's obvious to me, but not to you, you silly little twit. That's unkind. That's unloving. And I'll even say that's abusive. If you're with somebody like that, it's very important for you to say, excuse me, but it's also very important for you to know who you are and that you have a good reason for doing, acting, saying, and feeling the way you feel. You see? Having somebody not respect your opinion is absolutely a toxic relationship. It's considered that. And is certainly emotionally abusive. If they are implying that you are dumb, if they are implying anything of that nature, or brushing you off, or dismissing you, you have to have a talk, because that's abusive. The danger here comes over time. It comes with a repetitive experience. Because if you hear that every single day, if you hear that several times a day, you're going to feel inadequate, frustrated, your confidence and self-esteem is going to go into the garbage. Do you understand? Hello, Keisha. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time. I'm delighted that you are with us today, sweetheart. Happy New Year to all of you. So, anybody who continues to put you down is seeking one thing, and it's the destroyer of relationships. You know what that is? Control. Why do they seek control? You might want to say it together. Because of low self-esteem, because there's a shame-based element to it. Because people that are not shame-based don't need control. You understand? All right. The next abusive behavior is that they hold grudges. Guys, first of all, when you are having an argument with somebody, you better go all the way to the end of that argument. You better resolve it. There are two ways that you know it's resolved. Number one, it's not about what they did or did not do, or what you did or did not do. There is a solution present that from now on, when this comes up, this is what we're going to do. Okay? So there's a solution present. Second of all, you're not finished with that argument until you love and appreciate that person more than you did before you had the argument. This is how one deepens in a relationship over time. Now, to have a successful argument, i.e. discussion, you better be articulate. You better know where you're coming from. You better be able to express that. So does your partner need that talent? So there needs to be a certain amount of emotional language that people are comfortable in using. I say again, one of the best exercises for this is to look at an emotional sheet all over the internet. Just enter emotion. Get a list. Oh, we can recognize when we're angry, can't we? Do you realize that there may be 50 components to that anger? If you stand under that umbrella, that's not considered emotionally intelligent. I'm just angry. Really? What are the elements? What are the elements? Now we're talking emotional intelligence. The more emotionally intelligent you are, the better chance you have of a relationship succeeding. Now, let's go back to grudges. Your relationship is not about the past. Excuse me. My little cat over here, I think, for those of you that just, Figgy, can you be seen again? We found a little stray cat before Christmas. This is little Figgy. She is a 6-month-old female. She's cute as she can be, isn't she? She's the only female we have in the house, except for me. And I was laughing earlier that I provide very little estrogen these days to everything. But anyway, she's a doll. We found her as a stray in the parking lot. And so when she, down the mountain, and she's just been a great addition to this family. Everybody really loves her. But I have to grab her when she wakes up because her thank you, Sheila. Because her favorite thing to do is sleep by the computer. So whenever she rolls over, I'll hold her up to the camera or to a client or something. So there you are. Anyway, she's a sweetheart. So when something happens, do you realize that, coming from a consciousness standpoint, every moment is sacred. This moment that we're having right now is never going to come again. You're never going to be where you are, sitting the way you are, your balance a certain way, in those clothes, in that underwear, my husband and I always say. Hearing these particular words, this moment is energetically different from all the other moments in your life. We don't realize how sacred these moments are, do we? So if we hold grudges, we're not in this moment. And we're certainly not realizing the sacredness of this moment, are we? We're in the past. We're in the past. So, somebody that holds grudges will try to emotionally manipulate you. Sometimes that's called a guilt trip. They'll tell you all your past infractions when there's an argument. It's considered emotional abuse because it's a toxic behavior. You can't do anything about what's been in the past, can you? No. You can only fix something right now in this moment and bring your marvelous attention to that. You see, this becomes then an attempt to manipulate the conversation, and it certainly doesn't allow space to grow because it's not a forward-moving thing. It's a slam in the moment because the weight of all the past is thrown on top of you. It's not about now. It's not about two people trying to be better. and bring the best of them and contribute that to this relationship. It's not about that. Being constantly reminded, this article goes on to say, of mistakes and poor choices in the past does not take into consideration that you may have changed. The article says, I say, this moment. Now, I had a client years ago like this. It took me a while to unhook her from this, because whenever she would talk about her partner, and there was a little disagreement between them. It's interesting because they don't disagree anymore. They're just the cutest couple in the world. They've really worked through a lot of this. But when I said, you know, isn't that wonderful? I'm seeing this change as they were growing and changing and shifting. She'd say, oh yeah, but 20 years ago, let me tell you, he would do this. And she went through all his infractions. And it's like, now is now, then was then. Don't mix them up. It's only about now. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else? No. The next point is they make you feel insecure. Well, I think if they're doing all this abusive stuff myself, I don't see how anybody could be secure myself. According to clinical psychologist Dr. Josh Klapow, if you live in a constant state of uncertainty and the clarity that we all want from a steady relationship is simply absence, it's probably emotional abuse. I've watched families for a long, long time. At my age, I've seen 3 generations of families, sometimes 4. And you can see what's being passed down. You really can. One of the things that I think is so damaging to families is unpredictability. Now, I think it was Bruno Bettelheim who wrote a book called The Uses of Enchantment, about how good fairy stories were for us, these kids' stories. He goes on to say that, it empowers a child to hear Hansel and Gretel, and they burn the witch and the house down, which releases something in them so they don't have to do it in reality. Now, there are people with mental illness that can't see the fantasy from the reality, right? But we're not talking about that. You're not listening to this show. I think it was, I hope I'm not getting confused about this, but I think it was Bruno Bettelheim that then says that while unpredictability in a house is very confusing to the child, it also fosters something that you wouldn't give up for anything. You know what that is? Creativity. Because we're constantly, as creative people, trying to get back to peace. That eludes us sometimes in an unpredictable household. It's there sometimes, it's not there in other times. So his theory, if I've gotten this right, I think I have, was that it isn't the household that's all bad that is the most wonderful, creative, I should say, or all good, as in affluence and all that sort of stuff. It's the one that is unpredictable. I think that's a really interesting theory. I think it certainly spurs a lot of us on to be creative individuals. So use it. If you've been together for a long time, when you you may feel your partner holding you at arm's length. That certainly makes you feel insecure, right? There are some marriages that after 18 years don't know each other as well as they did during the first 5. What happened there? Well, a lot of this, and every one of these points makes you feel unsafe. And if you feel unsafe, you're not going to open yourself up to being vulnerable. And if you're not opening yourself up to be vulnerable, you're not emotionally available. And if you're not emotionally available, you're gone from that marriage, from that relationship. We simply have to be here and fix some of these problems. And I think long before you feel insecure, you better address what's going on. This is why I keep saying, when we do these shows on relationships, for God's sake, choose well. It's the most important decision that you can make. Don't just take anybody, don't just be so thrilled to have a relationship. Somebody loves me. Don't just be so anxious for that because you're empty inside. You fix that inside, and then you'll make good decisions. The next point is they're super needy. Abusive people often are super needy. Emotional abuse can crop up in the form of ongoing, seemingly unfixable neediness. Your partner might want you to run their life for them, address their every need. And while that might not seem negative, at least in the beginning, it's still a form of toxic control. Guys, we talk about a lot of self-development on these shows. You be sure when you are entertaining the idea of a friend or a relationship that's deeper than a friend, that you really consider these things. These things are very important to watch out for. You know, I love the word dating. I love the dating experience. It concerns me in this day and time that people are mixing that up and not knowing what that is. Everybody's hopping into bed too fast with each other. And guys, the waters get muddy. You are supposed to know this other person. You're supposed to observe them. You're supposed to see how they act in every situation. Okay? If you're convincing yourself of this fantasy relationship, you're not going to see all this. And a lot of people, instead of just having a nice, relationship which is just about sex and nothing else, if you can do that, great. Not many people can do that. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't care what you're saying to yourself. Not many people can do that. You need to be clear-headed. You need to observe people. You need to observe yourself in relationship and fix what's broken. All that, incredibly important. It's all about healing. It isn't about staying or going in a relationship. It's about growing, isn't it? You can grow there, stay there. If you can't grow there, get out. But you better investigate it, see what you can and can't do, because you don't know the answer to that question most of the time. Okay. I'd like to talk next about what emotional resilience is. I did some research. I didn't like one article that I read on this, so I wrote my own. So here we go. First of all, let's talk about this. Emotional resilience is when you see what's really going on, when you have a sense of what's really going on. It's not just emotional resilience. I think every kind of resilience is mixed into this. I think it's a healthy mind, a healthy body, a healthy emotional state, and I think it's really important to have a healthy spiritual life. All of that gives you a perspective on any situation and on this little moment that's disturbing you. You need all of your faculties. All right. That said, I also want to say that not a lot is written about our sense of self. We have a sense of balance, don't we? We have a sense of all sorts of things. We know our five senses. But there's also a deeper, energetic, powerful sense of self in you. And because nobody knows quite how to talk about it, deal with it, and have it be tangible, because it's not, this often gets shuffled out. It often gets given away. It's often not developed. And you need it. So what I'm going to talk to you about certainly are all the elements of your regaining or having a sense of self. I was talking to a client of mine the other day. She's a grandparent. And she has a very disturbed little grandchild. And the grandchild was visiting. And the grandchild is very disturbed because the mother is an alcoholic. She has no father in the house. The mother has poisoned her mind against the father. It's a messy situation. There's no help for this little girl, seemingly. So she was there with the grandparents, and I said to my client, I said, well, what's she doing? And she said, we do crossword, not crossword, what do you call them? Jigsaw puzzles. And I said, why are you doing that? Well, she seems to like it. Here's the problem, guys. It's neither good nor bad. Here's the problem. That child has very few avenues for knowing that some of the truths in life. What if, instead of a jigsaw puzzle, which honestly helps a minuscule part of you, what if the grandmother goes in and says, let's write a story, let's illustrate a story, let's do something that is in the creative arena. I can't tell you guys how many times the creative arena has saved lives in this world. It's not even about discovering talents, although isn't that nice when you do? It's about saving your life. It's about showing you that you have resources inside of you that your mom, in this case, does not recognize and doesn't even know in herself. Why don't we go explore some of them? Why don't we go and put the jigsaw puzzles away and find out what's inside in some sort of fun way, as even a game? Why not do that? So the first note that I have here is you need more awareness. To be emotionally resilient, you have to have awareness. You have to know things like I just put on the table. You have to discover things, you have to go past the obvious. Go past the jigsaw puzzle, everybody. Who are you on the inside? What do you believe? What do you hold on to as your truth that doesn't go away when bad times come? You know, that's my only problem with the dogma of religion. I remember years ago, I had a client whom I am very fond of, who was talking about her dad before he passed away. I think he was not yet passed away. I think he was still alive. And she just was adamant about saying how strong he was in his belief. He was depressed all of his life. He was always worried about being fired in any job he ever had. He was never happy. He locked himself away from family most of the time, into his own world. He was now, at the end of his life, terrified to die. Terrified to die. I don't know, guys. You know, I say we're all doing our journey. Now, this guy really believed you are not going to break his idea that he really believed in God and, you know. But he didn't live it. I think that when we decide what we're going to believe, we need to get everything that doesn't believe that out of our way. And that's what you all are doing when you're listening to a show like this and when you're doing private sessions. That's what you're doing. So you can really believe. I would love to see you at deep peace, knowing that God is in the middle of everything. And it's just a working out and a listening and a discovering and an opening to more. So, awareness. And you remember, I think awareness is very important because it goes awareness to consciousness to enlightenment. Enlightenment being the advanced versions of consciousness. I think consciousness is where we believe we know. And I think enlightenment is where we know absolutely what we believe. To me, those are the differences. The difference. The second part of this is I think that we, a resilient people, see other people, their partners, and themselves realistically. I think that the fantasy is gone. And I think that because fantasy is one of those things that all of us use to make our childhood a little better, we fantasize about everything, our relationship with the people in our early childhood home, about ourselves, about family in general. We can have fantasies about all sorts of things. It interferes with life when reality comes smashing up against it. You're going to be hurt worse if you have fantasy. Many times, you know, I will be working with a client and they'll say, I went out on a date. Oh, it was absolutely nothing. It was just somebody I met online and I met them for coffee. But I came home and had this strangest feeling. I was depressed. I didn't care about this person. What in the world? But I was depressed. And I said, well, let's talk about that. Because there was a fantasy going in to that meeting to have coffee. It was a fantasy. He was perhaps the one. Guys, no. There is no one. There is a choice that two people make. So it's your feelings, sometimes on the back end, that tell you, wait a minute, I got a fantasy going on here. And then it's up to you to address that. You don't need that anymore. Make yourself happy in other ways. That's the childhood drama playing out. We don't need it. It will not serve you well in a real relationship. In a real relationship, fantasy is twofold. You may be fantasizing, and we may address that and call you on all your fantasies, but you know, if somebody comes along and fantasizes about you, oh, you may like that. So you're experiencing fantasy vicariously. I'm not going to let you have that either. No, that's not good for you. You know, I would look twice at anybody who says on the first date, oh, I love Hawaii. I'd love to take you there one day. You don't know that person. It's ridiculous. Listen for those things. See people realistically. Have you ever known anybody, and perhaps this is you, who has fallen in love with somebody's potential? They have no interest, and thank you so much, darling. They have no interest in reaching that potential. You just see it, but they're not going to do anything about it. Maybe you better wake up to that and see them realistically. Again, that's the whole point of dating, is to observe how they are over time. They're doing the same with you. Everything is revealed in the dating experience. Be sure and be willing to see it. Don't let your fear of being alone or not having anybody or not being able to make it in the world and all those things that are lesser reasons for people to partner predominate. If you do, you're going to make a mistake. But is it a mistake, of course, in the scheme of things? No, it's where you are right now. You know, many people are Mr. Right or Ms. Right for right now. But if you're wanting something lasting, these things have to be in place in you first. And then you can attract a partner where these things are in place for them. Next point. We're talking about emotional resilience. You need to know what your responsibilities are and what they are not, by the way. You're not responsible for somebody else's happiness, and yet, if you came from a nice dysfunctional home in a certain way, you may have been trained to be responsible for somebody else's happiness. You're not. Everybody's responsible for their own happiness, and that's it. So if you're in a healthy, good partnership, and somebody is unhappy, you certainly say, do you want to talk about it? May I help you? And but you don't go to all these contortions that you did as a kid to make somebody happy. You let them understand themselves. You go off and do something else if they don't want to talk about this. Enjoy your life. I think that many people do not know where their responsibilities lie. And this leads me to the next point, and that is know what your boundaries are and how to reinforce them. I think that the responsibilities and boundaries sometimes get mixed up here, so I'm going to address them all kind of as one thing. If you were in a household who trounced all over people's boundaries, okay? If you did, for example, if you had a mother who was a very controlling mother and she just controlled everything and told you what to think and feel and how to be, and you are confused as an adult about, wait a minute, what am I responsible for here? You may be inclined yourself to try to control things because she's taught you that there's something fearful out there, even if it doesn't have a name, and that the only way you can survive in life is to control it. And if she told you, by trouncing all over those boundaries, that you didn't make great decisions, if you were that kid in the muddy yard that I talked about earlier in this show, you think that you're wrong. You think you've done something wrong. You don't think you were. And that makes you vulnerable. So part of consciousness is waking up. Here are my responsibilities. Here are not my responsibilities. I have a client that I just adore who's married to a high conflict person. You're going to hear about high conflict people either today or next week, probably next week, quite frankly. And he is sometimes not a very nice man. He speaks to her condescendingly. He's sarcastic. He's rough in his tone. And she says to him, "It hurts me when you speak to me that way. And I don't want you to speak to me that way anymore." It often comes across as a demand. Is that within her right to say that? Don't do that anymore. Don't speak to me like that. No. That's not within her right. That's her trying to control something. She should have made either a better choice. She has the choice now to call him on that in the line and not let it bother her any further than that, or to divorce him. She has that choice. But that she has to tell people what to do to control her world, you don't get that right. You only can control yourself. Know what your responsibilities are and what they are not. Know where your boundaries are and when you're stepping over them. Because let me tell you, when you do step over them, somebody's going to react. They'll tell you to get your toes over the line. I certainly will. That's inappropriate. So those are the things you need to know. How do you learn about them? Well, there's plenty of books out there, plenty of articles on the internet. And there are people that can take you through this, like me, as you work in a session. These things are very personal. Everybody has their own way of doing this, of not knowing what their responsibilities are, being confused. What makes, for example, a good daughter? All right, let me get it even more confusing. What makes a good daughter of a toxic mother? Totally toxic mother. What makes a good sister when your sisters are horrible and toxic and don't think out of the box? There's a lot to discover here. There are a lot of questions to ask, and there are a lot of old behaviors to go past. Okay, so knowing your boundaries, knowing your responsibility, certainly those things are on the table. My favorite word, discernment. To be emotionally resilient, you need to be discerning. Discerning comes out of your discovery of responsibilities and boundaries. You know, it's where you're willing to see everything and where you have your own opinions about that. If you avoid, if you look away, and that's not going to serve you. You have to see it all. Another really important thing is, I think it's always powerful in a relationship to have some sort of basic working knowledge of psychology. It isn't what people do that is generally the problem. It's what motivates them underneath. You see? And if you can talk that language, then it isn't about your opinion or their opinion. I know that Michael and I had this discussion when we first married. I can't remember what it was about now, because obviously that problem is fixed. But I said, here, here's a problem. in our marriage here in this little way. And he immediately went to, and he has, his family are very, what do I want to say? They have a lot of rules, right? And he went immediately to, there's one of your rules. And I had to point out to him, that wasn't Martha's rules. That's the rule of a good relationship, which he got immediately. It's the rule of a good relationship, not defined by me, but defined by any psychologist you'll find on the internet. There it is. Do your research. Okay. Another thing that gives you emotional resilience is to give people the benefit of the doubt. You heard me say that. That's a loving thing to do. Up to a point. Here's where discrimination comes in. Guys, if you don't see somebody moving, if they just talk about it all the time, they're telling you what they want to do. Be aware, be awake, watch that. And I think after a point, there's no point in giving them the benefit of the doubt anymore. Right? You're not a doormat. You're not loving if you don't see things as they are. Why do you think God gave you discernment? That's God too. So we have to give people the benefit of the doubt, but know when they're taking advantage of that and when you just simply must stop. You're giving energy away that you shouldn't at that point. Another point is if you're going to be resilient, you have to give up your egoic right, in other words, a right that your ego thinks, to be right. You don't have a right to be right. And again, anybody who absolutely feels they're right is showing their insecurity, because let me tell you, deep down inside, there is something shame-based. Nobody needs to be right. People just need to negotiate the world. You just talk to each other. You just work out a solution. Life is a lot easier than this. Now, when you have a high conflict partner, it isn't that easy. We're going to be talking about that next week. Probably next week. If I can get to it fast, I will. I think when we have to be right, number one, we're putting tasks before people. Number two, we are throwing out for an egoic child reason and our insecurity and shame, we are throwing out the one thing that we are here to do, which is to love each other. And we completely forget when we do this, when we need to be right, that love is a privilege that we should be protecting and working on. Guys, I understand that these issues that I'm talking about now and what we must change and grow from came from your childhood, and you have a very good reason for having them. But if you want a great relationship instead of just settling for an okay one or a good one, you're going to look at these things. I think I've told you the story before, but I'm going to put it on the table again. So years ago, when I was working with a certain couple who are just doing great now, they told me this story, and they both work with me. So I heard this story from two different places, and the perspectives. So the husband was in the kitchen. He was doing kinesiology and counting out his vitamins and everything, seeing what he needed. His wife was in another room. And his wife is very fast and very demanding. She was back then, not so much now. And so she called him and she said, "There's something in the basement that I need. It was too heavy for me to carry up. Go get it." And he got furious. He got furious because this always happened. Where is his agenda? Where is what he needs? He needed to do what he was doing, right? So I want to jump to talking with her. So when I think I saw him first, and then I saw her, and she came in and told me the story. And I said, first of all, I think it's really important that you have to realize that everybody has in that moment of whatever that moment is, they're all doing what they want to do or think they should do. So you are interrupting every time. Need to know that. So that changes our language, Instead of a demand, it becomes, "Darling, when you have time." Okay. That's true for everybody. And secondly, I think it's very important to set this up and let him understand your situation and ask for his help when he can do it. And she got real mad at me. And she said, "You mean that I have to watch every single thing I say to my own husband in my own house every minute of every day?" And I said, "No, that's a relationship you have now. But if you want a better one, yeah, that's exactly what you need to do. This is the work on a relationship, and on a great one. It isn't about what you've done wrong in the past and the mistakes you've made. It's about right this moment. What's going to happen in this moment? And if you arm yourself with the old ego armor and the need to be right and then feeling justified, you're doing a real disservice to relationship and to yourself, because your highest self is nothing but love. It knows that love is most important. Why do you think you're drawn to relationships in the first place? You want to discover this. You want to be more intimate. You want to have those deeper experiences of self and partnership. Whoops. Figgy, you can't. I love this cat. She's adorable, but she loves to get on the computer. No, I don't want to end the episode. All right. She decided the show was over. Apparently, I'm not being entertaining enough for this little cat. Whoa! And there goes the tea. All right. Here we go. Next point. Guys, stripped down and bare, and I'm not talking about physically, I'm talking about emotionally, stripped down and bare, we're nothing but love. We've learned that love can't be itself, especially if we've got some shame mixed into our lives. We're shame-based. Oh, we've got to pretend. We got to put on this thing, right? We've got to be ego-driven. We've got to be smart. We've got to... Guys, the whole reason you're in a relationship is you want to be loved and you want to love. Don't mess it up. Stripped down and bare, you need to know what a privileged love is and what love is. Many of us don't know. And you need to go about preserving it. Now, what do I mean by that? Some people are, well, how do I want to put this? Is that a good enough story? I'll give you a shallow little story, but a story nevertheless. So I was talking to a friend of mine, actually. This was a hairdresser of mine years ago. And she was in some sort of mood that day and really disparaging her husband. And she was saying, I can't stand taking my husband to a party because he hogs the refreshment table and he won't let anybody else get in there. His big old self is right there and he's stuffing his face the whole time. And that's the only reason he's at the party. And it's embarrassing. It's not nice. It's not socially acceptable. And I said, well, have you mentioned that to him? And she said over and over and over again, which, by the way, is not going to help anything. Because if you tell somebody the first time and you're articulate and you really are trying to help them and they don't do it, what does that tell you? It tells you they don't want to do it and they're not going to do it for whatever reason. So she said, well, what do I do about this? And I said, well, you either have to keep nagging him, which is going to make the house unsafe. He's going to feel unsafe in the house. That's going to damage your relationship over time. You can divorce him. You have some kids, though. And the third thing you can do is love him enough to look away. You see, in any good marriage, there are things, of course, that bother us. There are things that I do that bother Michael. There are things that he does that bother me. Do we love each other enough to look away because we realize those things aren't important? We should. Sure. And you should too. Sometimes looking away is loving. Guys, don't forget, love is a privilege. Love is a privilege. If you remember that, you'll be all right. The interesting thing about love is a privilege is it is about your contribution to love. That's the privilege here. And what you get back, how lovely. But using what you know and using it cleanly and beautifully and the way love should be, without all the adulterations that we put on it, the control, is a wonderful thing. The next point is, guys, you're not going to be happy all the time. I read an article, it was a wonderful article, that said, here's the thing, I don't remember what the title was, but it was, here's the thing that psychologists say is the biggest source of your misery. It was something like that. Guess what it was? The pursuit of happiness. That was their language. Let me give you my language. There's a what do I want to say? It's kind of this thing that people have that they think, it comes out of their fantasy. But we call it the seeker to feel good. These are people that seek experiences to feel good because they don't feel good. So they run from one thing to another to feel good. The seeker to feel good. Here's the problem with that. It's a momentary feel good because they feel bad. They never address it. So their whole life is crap. They never reach levels of happiness in them. And here's the other point I wanted to make. You're responsible for your own happiness. You're not responsible for anybody else's happiness. You're responsible for yours. That does not mean it is a relentless pursuit of happiness. It means that you're sensitive and aware of yourself and what you need, and that you are providing it, or you're asking someone to help you. You are following your creativity and what you need to do for yourself in the world. We are whole people, guys, responsible for ourselves and no one else. Now make it a good one, okay? I'm going to stop there. Next week, I absolutely want to go into the information on high conflict partners. High conflict people in general, they may be your boss, they may be a partner in your home, they may be a friend, but we're going to call it what it is. There's a great book, if you all want to read it, if you recognize just from the name High Conflict, there's a great book. I taught this book at one point. It's by Bill Eddy, who's a lawyer, therapist, mediator, and he has an institute. He's director of the High Conflict Institute. And there's a marvelous book called 5 Types of People Who Can Ruin Your Life. I think now that's a pretty dramatic title because sometimes you're in relationship to those people and you just need to know how to negotiate. And sometimes it's bad enough so you need not to be in those relationships, granted. But we're going to talk about that next week, okay? Guys, thank you so much for listening today. It's nice to be back with you. And I ask that you all, if you've enjoyed this show and all these other shows, please reach out on social media so we can expand our audience. Tell people about these shows. I think on Blog Talk Radio, and I may be wrong about this because this might be the way it used to be and not the way it is now. I think there's a little thing on your screen that says, oh, Fabiola. Oh, you were here, Fabiola. I'm so glad. Thank you so much. Y'all are so sweet. Oh, and your friend Randy was here, Kat. How lovely. That's wonderful. And you too, Sheila. Have a blessed week for all of you. So let's do a quick prayer to sum all this up. But thank you so much for your reaching out and telling people about these shows. It means the world to us. I am delighted to do these shows. And we are, oh, thank you, darling. Thank you. Thank you all so much. It is a remarkable world where things are not what they seem. And it's so fun to talk to like-minded people that want to know more, that are not ego-driven and that are open to love. It's great. Dear God, we thank you so much for all of us being together and so much for this new day that we are going to go out in the world and live. We say now, indeed, every moment is sacred. Put us in touch with that. These moments are unique and they'll never come again. In some energetic way, this moment is all we've got. And then the next one and the next one. Let us realize that we can open on deeper levels of ourselves and clearly be in touch with you, who is all we are, and the ascended energies of the living God that we all are. Put us in touch with that today. Put us in touch with that each moment. Let us realize that life and love are sacred experiences that we are open to and deepening in even as we speak. Thank you so much, dear God. Now, we open ourselves to say, lift off anything of these old issues that we're ready to leave and to get rid of. Show us what we need to see, that we may move past them and live dynamic, loving lives. Thank you so much, dear God. We say this now in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, in the name of these precious friends that are letting me know they're here. Thank you. And so it is. Amen. Okay, kids. I'll see you next week. when we're going to talk about high conflict partners and bosses and kids and the neighbor and your friends. Okay? Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.